Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. It continues to be rather spicy here at CDL Major 1. The snaking drama is back in business already after some teams pulled it out in rather obvious fashion last night. Method is not particularly happy, and even Arcitys is talking about snaking from other teams. But Drazah, I can tell you in a second, you weren't saying this when you had Cellium on your team. Very much intrigued your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. We've got to dive into as well the FaZe versus Toronto series from last night. This is a pretty crazy series, to be honest. I knew it was going to be a barn burner. I thought maybe FaZe in 5. But yeah, Ultra lose game 1, largely thanks to CleanX dropping 7 kills. He was 3 in 21 in this game at one point. He was in the absolute blender. Ends up 7 in 24. FaZe only just win. And this admittedly is already a kind of consistent theme we're kind of seeing. Now, Standy goes on in fairness for Ultra this entire series. But yeah, FaZe, despite outslaying, I mean, when CleanX goes 7 in 24, you really should be winning this game more comfortably than 21 points. But, you know, still, he was in the blender. We know that CleanX is incredibly valuable. He had a rough map here, but doesn't mean he's a player that needs to get dropped or anything like that. But even this in FaZe, right, they dropped the dog sent to Martin because, you know, the 7 kills. I even talked about it yesterday for Spart, and then it happened again just an hour or so later with CleanX. And even Doug says, my bad, I'll give Toby the controller back. That is on me. It's a pretty funny stuff. Going into game 2, though, again, it's, well, Standy that went off in this game too. He was making play after play. And, I mean, yeah, look at this gunfight he wins there on Cellium. And I gotta say, the questions are going to be starting to be raised about the Cellium situation, right? Because this guy drops a 1.3 every single series without fail. And last year he did the same thing, but they were winning more often than they were losing. And it was like, you know what, Cellium, he's still the best player in the game, whatever. I think that was justified last year. This year he's doing the same, but again, the Tiny Terrors are having a rough time of things, and they're now losing series. So I do wonder when this kind of conversation is going to turn, just because I still think Cellium's great, of course, but there's got to be some playstyle concerns going on here, because for all the pros like to talk about the fact that, oh yeah, KD doesn't matter and it's all about the eye test and how they're actually delivering on the server. Like, you know, all the pros gas up Cellium because he's dropping a 1.3 every single series, but now they're 1 and 2 at the start of the season. Now, in fairness, they probably should have lost the game 4 as well. They made it, honestly, this was really patient, and like FaZe and Ultra are definitely both playing on a pretty damn high level here. And the way that FaZe are able to break this final hill as well, like, I mean, they go just on the brink of winning. Ultra then bring it back right towards the end. It goes 247, 249, and FaZe make a really patient break here. They send Slasher on the flank. He gets the kill against Scrappy. That was a big kill. Gets the pinch in, and then Standy could do nothing against 3 in the hard point. They win at 250-249. Like, it was a banger series. I'm looking forward to seeing more of this. Honestly, Ultra versus FaZe always delivers. But game 5, honestly, Ultra were just by far the better team. Like, FaZe don't know what they're doing right now in Search and Destroy. A surprise just because their search was lackluster last year compared to what it was back in Cold War. And Slasher has always been a great search player, but hasn't been delivering so far with this team. So that I think is where they need to improve, because if their search was better, they'd have won more series than they have so far. But they're 1 in 2 going against, okay, they play Vegas today, but we'll see how that one goes, who knows. And over the last title, they were on a 10-game winning streak against the Ultra. Now that's come to an end, come crashing down, and Standy was a key piece of the puzzle there. Look at these overall numbers here. Standy a 1.35. Honestly, it's cool to see Standy back in that Cold War form, because this guy was such a deadly player then. Scrappy a 1.2, Inside a 1.1. Okay, CleanX has a rough one, but a lot of that was that map 1 performance. Cellium, again, a 1.36, but the Tiny Terrors both have a really rough time of things. So, look, I don't know. It's always a conversation that's going to be had, but it's almost like Cellium's performance in terms of the KD doesn't really have any bearing on how the series result actually goes. He could drop a 1.3, and the series result can be practically anything. So, yeah, I don't know. Pretty spicy and interesting stuff, it's got to be said. Early days, of course, and Toronto are looking like it, and they should be one of the better teams in the game. So, not a massive surprise for FaZe to lose, but just the fashion in which they lost, I thought, was somewhat surprising, and especially because, as Insight says, couldn't believe my eyes. I tabbed out after the first 2 maps and was playing on Wi-Fi. So game 1, he was on Wi-Fi connection, he plugged in the LAN, and maybe like CleanX was on the mobile data or something because it wasn't looking so good. And then Scrappy kind of refrains from talking too much trash, but I'm sure it's going to be there if they do take him down to the major, because FaZe are obviously the team to beat. Scrappy comes in, they break that 10-game or 10-series losing streak up against Atlanta FaZe, and even as Simp says, couldn't do much last map. I think aBeZy said as well they need to work on their Search and Destroy. So they play Vegas tomorrow or today to get to 2 in 2. If they win that, then fair enough. 2 in 2, not the end of the world. I think a lot of other top teams are going to be in a similar boat, but it does mean that these seedings, man, for Major 1 are going to be crazy. There are going to be some really stacked groups, and we could have some really big name teams going out in groups based on these performances. Honestly, another funny thing to note here, right, because after that victory, or after Subliners beat Los Angeles Guerrillas last night, every team now has some points on the board, apart from Vegas Legion. And because Vegas are 0-2 with 0 points, because the CDL are now including those teams that have qualified for the Major 1 Prom kind of play-in thing, right? Vegas are now sitting here at 16th on the rankings. They're not even top 12 anymore. They're down in 16. But if they can beat FaZe today, then every team in the league would have at least put up a victory on the board. But yeah, it's not looking all that good for Vegas right now. Speaking of Thieves, obviously, because they play tonight as well against Florida, should be a relatively easy series, you would think. But their skin on the right-hand side here, we talked about, this sold so many copies because it's kind of like, gives a competitive advantage, really difficult to see, especially in Warzone. They sold a lot of this, and now they've fixed it, it seems, in the upcoming update. It's now going to look like this. I think it looks better, to be honest. But there has been some drama about this, right? Because people now want a refund because, what they now have bought is not what they had bought before. Some would say, you know what, it's fair enough. You tried to buy it for a competitive advantage, so it's your fault. And, if you are actually a Los Angeles Thieves fan and buying it for that reason, it probably looks better now, to be honest, than it did before. But, yeah, people aren't happy with it, want to get a refund, but Activision are like, well, we have the right to change it whenever we want, so unlucky, mate, you're not getting a refund, basically. And even as Envoy says, Activision want to hog all that rose cash and not share with the CDL, which is pretty interesting take. I don't know if Envoy knows anything that we don't about the way that this revenue is spread, because, I think it's kind of common knowledge now in esports that the party that benefits the most from esports is the publisher, i.e. Activision in this case, and not necessarily the organizations and the players and the sponsors for those organizations. I think that's a key point that the publishers will have to consider in the future, is how they actually ensure their organizations are getting a kind of fair slice of the pie in terms of being viable long term. But, Activision don't like to part with money unless they absolutely have to. So I thought I was spicy a little bit from Envoy. Now let's dive into this other big spicy thing of the day. This is the snaking discussion is now back in business. This happens every year at some point or another. Cellium is always considered to be the key proponent, really. But since Cellium has been doing it, like everyone else is doing it now. You watch any map, there's spots on Hotel, there's spots on Fortress especially. There's even spots we'll see here in a second on Embassy where you can crouch, just about go prone, then sprint forward, stand up again, and it makes you an incredibly difficult target to kill. Now, this is kind of frowned upon by the pros and in the competitive scene. If you're abusing this movement mechanic for, really what's considered an unfair advantage, maybe you shouldn't be doing it. And there's been a few times in COD history where the pros have said, you know what, like, let's ban it, let's not use it, let's decide to go away from snaking and to kind of consign it to the history books. Never really seems to work, especially because, to players like Cellium, they'll kind of just do it anyway, and if one player's doing it, you can't really not do it. It's also difficult to ban in the first place, just because let's say a player goes prone to reload their gun and then stands up again. Is that a snake? Like, it's kind of a bit of a grey area on what's kind of, clear and obvious abuse of snaking, which is clear and obvious when you see it, and what's potentially, a bit of a grey area. So always tough to say what they should do about this, if anything. But, the drama is back in business. So Arcitys says last night, people don't even care about snaking anymore. And this clip was from Scump's watch party where Methods is talking about snaking and saying that it's absolutely pathetic and shameless that these pros are still doing it at the moment and that they should effectively get rid of it. And the other guys in the call seem to agree, although they do admit afterwards it's pretty difficult to actually ban this stuff.
Guy's trying to play around with them.
Out at all.
Guerrillas.
Snaking's competitive.
Line up for two. Caesar puts them to bed.
I can't believe we're just allowing snaking. Like, it's actually pathetic.
11.
Look at this. Shameless.
There's no way. You're not killing him.
There's no way to. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, it's been happening for like 5 years now.
Yeah, it's been GA'd for a while, man.
The first game in the league, it was GA'd. Not only like a few players really did it here and there. Yeah, and like Cold War, like.
Okay, there's a difference between like blatant snaking and then just like you have to reload and you're weak. So
Yeah.
Like I'm come on.
Like people are.
Yeah, but
doing it. Everyone's doing it now.
But all it took is one person to feel like they got snaked on.
If you're not doing it, you're like trolling.
Yeah.
I'm snaking. I don't give a.
Wait, who wins round? Who wins round 11?
Look at Spart. Look at Spart. Like, why are you?
So every day that goes past, there's more drama and discussion on the snaking and whether it should be banned or what they can even do about it. But I thought again, man, Drazah, like, this guy is coming for the smoke. Drazah and Scrappy and these guys are not afraid to tweet stuff like this out. And then, as Drazah says, where was this problem when Cell was on your team? So Drazah versus FaZe continues even when FaZe aren't in the immediate discussion. This is a player from Thieves, a player from Los Angeles Guerrillas, streamers talking about FaZe, but it's an interesting point from Drazah, right? Because at the start of this title, we've seen a lot of players snake, as you saw in that example right there behind the car on Embassy. Really difficult target to kill. Arguably, you shouldn't be able to do that, but you know, it's a game mechanic. It's been there for ages. I think they tried to remove it from Vanguard or Cold War. They can make some tweaks if they want to try and make it less viable, but it's pretty much always going to be a thing in Call of Duty, it seems, at this point. And certain players like abusing it, and therefore other players think, you know what, screw this, I'm going to use it as well. And teams in the past that have tried to ban it have said, look, FaZe, please tell Cellium to stop snaking. And we saw this back in Cold War. They're like, I'm pretty sure players, even Slasher, I think, was saying at the time when he was on Thieves, he was like, well, look, if Cellium doesn't stop snaking, I'm going to start breaking GAs, we're going to start going rogue, all this stuff. And Cellium was like, yeah, I don't really care, lads. Like, you can say what you want, but I'm going to still play the game how I want to play the game. And in fairness, maybe Drazah's got a point. Was Arcitys saying this 2 weeks into the game last year when he was teaming with Cellium? Probably not right. Whereas nowadays, when he's not on Cellium's team anymore, he's now like, look, can we get rid of the snaking stuff? So, yeah, it's quite a point from Drazah, but maybe Drazah's thinking, you know what, yeah, Arcitys may be a bit disingenuous in his discussion here, but like, he agrees with Drazah, and Arcitys kind of agree on this, right? They're on the same side, maybe, against snaking. So, yeah, we see all the GAs, we see all the pros, gentlemen's agreement, and decide between them to ban certain things. And the M4, the Skull, all this drama, the snipers, the smokes have seen over the last few weeks, but they don't seem to try and do anything about snaking, which is arguably, in terms of, well, the game watchability in the long term, is also a key factor there. So I'm intrigued to your thoughts on that in the comment section below, that, yeah, the spice in this league right now is not going away. And just to mention before we look at today's games, online qualifier records, Cold War to Modern Warfare 2, these are some of the numbers here that honestly are kind of falling quite rapidly for the FaZe guys as it stands, with Simp, aBeZy, Cell, and Arcitys 37 in 10. But, you know, of course, this is going to change going into this season as we progress. These are some of the other numbers. I thought a funny one actually here was Octane, because Octane's like a record since Cold War is just so bad. They were 5 in 20 that year online, and then LAT Vanguard was not even that good online either, 9 and 11. So Octane is 15 in 32 online, but at least now he's got that World Championship win to his name. So let's talk about the matches for today. A lot of the teams are back involved. Scump, the OpTic guys, Methods, and the Boston guys. These are the 4 games. Maybe easier to call than yesterday's ones are, I think. FaZe should beat Vegas Legion. I don't exactly know what we're going to see from Legion here. FaZe, I think, are playing at a higher level, despite their loss yesterday to Toronto. How is the M4 ban going to affect Vegas, right? Because they were 0-2 last week anyway. We saw that Dashy said, yeah, they tried to get rid of it just because they sucked last week, and I hope that this match is better for them, but I'll take FaZe 3-1. Then OpTic versus Ravens. This is an interesting series, because if it goes game 5, Ravens have got to be kind of, you know, there or thereabouts, but I'll take OpTic 3-1. I think I can't imagine Ravens can get it to 5. I reckon, you know, 2-2. Start to the season for Ravens is maybe about right. Then Subliners Bridge. This is a great one, and I'm hoping this will be a great one, because going into the season, like, I had these teams so evenly matched in my power rankings, I really couldn't separate them. So far, Boston have looked significantly better. They're 2-0, but New York really turned up yesterday and actually looked prepared for the series. So I think this will be close. I'm going to take, I think, Breach in 5. I'm still not convinced at Subliners Search and Destroy, to be honest. So, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be about Boston either, but of course, Boston are losing the M4 now, which they were so good with in week 1. So we'll see how that goes for a team that we haven't seen play yesterday. And then Thieves Florida shouldn't be too difficult for Thieves to close out the day here. So yeah, that third series is probably the pick of the bunch for me. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.